Hey, Covenant Keepers, welcome back to the podcast. I am Brent, and I'm here with my super beautiful wife, Miss Lucy.
Hello.
We pray that everybody's had a wonderful week this last week. Before we get started on the podcast, I want to give a big shout out to my beautiful wife. She just completed a task that she's been working on here for the last few months. She got a real estate license.
Yes.
So let's give her a big thanks for that one. I know it's something that she's had on her heart for a while. Just another way to minister to people and come walk alongside them during this life.
Absolutely. It's been a journey, but we got the schooling out of the way, we got the exam out of the way, and now we're training.
You got a license out of the way, which was the other big thing.
Yes, got the license. Now I'm licensed to do stuff.
Licensed to do stuff. There you go. There you go. Look in the screen, baby.
Okay.
There you go. You're like wandering off into the wilderness there. So, I guess what we want to talk about today on the podcast, which is, I don't think we've talked about this, have we?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But it's the power of perception in marriage. And what we mean by that is basically how you perceive your marriage.
Well, your spouse.
Well, your spouse, your marriage overall, because you're either going to have a positive bent toward your marriage or you're going to have a negative bent toward your marriage.
Well, it's not toward the marriage, though. It's toward the spouse.
It could be both. It can be both.
I see it more like, when your spouse does something and you have a choice of looking at it through a positive scope or a negative one.
Mm-hmm. You do. Well, the thing is that we were reading in one of these studies that the negative thinking is one of the major risk factors that determine whether or not a marriage will even survive. So basically what they're saying is that a big determining factor in your marriage is how you perceive it, how you perceive your spouse, how you perceive your marriage. Like, have you lost hope in your marriage? Have you lost hope in your spouse?
Well, I can see that. I can see where that would be a determining factor for the, you said survival of the marriage?
A marriage surviving, yes.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, how many couples don't we know that, as soon as their spouse kind of messes up, it's kind of like, oh, this is the story of my life. This is what they always do. I don't know how I can live with him or with her doing this thing repeatedly all the time. I'm done. I love that. That's one that's, everybody, I'm done. So yes, perception of your spouse is huge. Well,
I know for us, being in the field that we're in, the counseling arena where we sit with couples every day outside of the weekend. We don't counsel on the weekend, but 5 days out of the week, we talk to a lot of couples. And typically by the time we get to meet them, they're in that place where they're definitely more in a negative mindset as far as their spouse and their marriage.
Well, yeah. They've allowed themselves to go down that road where everything is negative. Like everything that their spouse is doing for whatever crazy reason is to sabotage the whole marriage and the relationship, and that spouse can do no right.
Yeah. And I was thinking because I was listening to June Hunt the other day I listened to different podcasts, and this is one podcast that I was listening to. And it sounds so simple as I'm going to say it, but I heard it and it was just another profound reminder to me. It says basically, if you focus on the negative and think about the negative, your outcome of your life is going to be negative. But if you focus on the things that are good and positive, you're going to have more of a positive outlook on life. And that ties right into what this marriage discussion that you and I were having, because we see it a lot in couples where they get to that place where they can't focus on, I can't say they can't, they
have a hard time seeing the good in the other person. that they're doing things for the betterment of the relationship, that they're thinking about the other person. Yeah, they have a hard time saying that stuff.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that sometimes we get more focused on the negative than actually what's happening, in the situation. Like, take for instance, if you're in that place where you feel like, your spouse can't do no right, basically. Like you said a while ago, it's like it just seems like everything that they're doing is they're just out.
They're out to get me.
Out to get me. They have kind of like that enemy mindset that we share and talk about a lot on the podcast, where you feel like they're against you, they're working against you, we're just not a team anymore. And say it's something, I always use this example, taking the trash out. Like, man, he took the trash out again through the kitchen. He's just doing that because he knows that I don't like it. I just don't like it. And that's why he just keeps doing it. You're missing the fact that he's actually taking the trash out. Like, he could not be taking the trash out at all, but now you're at a place where it's even bothering you that he's doing something good. You know what I mean? Like,
because they've taken they're looking at it in a negative way instead of, like you said, thinking about it. And hey, at least he's now taking the trash out like I've asked him. Right. Not that he's not doing it in the way that I want him to do it.
You're missing the good part of it. And it's like we say that very rarely, I don't think I've met a person where I've known them to like wake up in the morning and say, okay, today I am really going to make my spouse's life horrible. Like, that's their goal.
That's kind of stuff like you see in a movie.
Yes.
Or you see couples trying to get at each other to see basically who's going to win.
Yeah.
You see that in movies. It's more of a comical thing in movies where they're trying to win. And you see that sometimes in real life couples where somebody's trying to almost like, you just wait, he's going to do it again, or she's going to do it again, kind of to prove that they're right.
Right.
But at the same time, like, if your spouse is wrong and you're right, you guys are still both losing, and the marriage is still losing because you're out to prove your rightness.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't think people now, I hear what you're saying. Like, they're like, okay, the negative's coming. Just wait, the negative's coming. That's one thing.
Well, that's that more pessimistic view.
But I'm talking about having intent. Like, oh, I'm going to make life horrible for you. Like, that's a whole different level of dysfunction, number one, especially when you think about marriage, because that's totally opposite of what we should be doing.
But there are people like that, though. They've gotten so angry with each other.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying that we know some, like, personally, but we've heard of some that, like, they're so bitter and enraged with each other and where the relationship is that they're constantly trying to, like, poke at each other and, like, prove that the other one's, wrong, like, constantly doing that. That is a level of unhealthiness.
Well, of course.
That's crazy.
Well, that goes back to that mindset of, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. Right?
An eye for an eye?
Twisted eye for an eye. Some people take that Bible verse and they go a whole nother level with it, right? Because even Jesus talks about that, about eye for an eye, and how he would define that for you. So it's very different. Now, and I know we've talked about this before in marriage, and how in the beginning, right? In the beginning, when we get married and we see life very different with our spouse, like, we have much more grace and mercy.
Well, everything's cute at the beginning.
What is? You have those rose-colored glasses where you just see the world differently because you have a very different perspective on your spouse. You know what I mean? Like, anything, like, you kind of laugh and chuckle it off, and
and you're all cuddle, and
cuddle,
so
laugh.
Cute.
Yeah, you pat each other around, and it's just kind of, a lot more giving
until it changes.
At some point it does change. And that's kind of what we're talking about, like, where the shift of the perception of the marriage happens, over time, where, that negative thinking, where before it may be just a sporadic thought, right? Because that's how the enemy, he's going to feed you with negative thoughts. Let's just take it to a spiritual realm here real quick. He's very good at twisting what the truth is, right? Like your husband's taking the trash out, and I should be happy he's taking the trash out, or your wife, because you've taken the trash out.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that. I don't want to make it think like it's only the husbands, but he'll take that positive, like me, where I have a little tendency to be a little critical at times. Not like I try to, but I can be critical. I'm just gonna be honest. And I may be the one that says, if you're going to take that trash can out, can you at least put the bag in? Taking the positive and taking twist a little bit to see a little bit more of the negative side of it, missing the good things that are happening and not focusing on the good things. And over time, that's where that conflict and anger, bitterness, frustration starts to build. So now it's just not once every 3 months. Maybe it's 3 times every month, where it starts to build up and it starts to volcano inside of you, where it starts to rumble. You start to feel the heat a little bit.
Well, I think, and this is what I believe, I think that maybe it gets to that point of like where the other person is now getting angry because they're not really talking to that other spouse about what they're feeling and why. They're not talking about it. They're just kind of stuffing it, I guess we would say. So then they're always looking at it through that negative scope. Oh, I know what he's going to do. I know what she's going to do.
Yeah.
He did it a couple days ago, so I already know what to expect.
Well, that's where that negative thinking, after it builds and it grows with the bitterness, like you start to see bad motives and things. That's where, the shift is starting to come, where you're thinking, well, it's just not they're doing something bad, but they are intentionally starting to do bad things, and that's where it starts to get dangerous, because you can start focusing more so on the negative than the positive at that point.
Well, yeah.
So now, where do you go from there? Like, what do you do?
Well, how do we help, I guess, couples not look at their spouse as an enemy, no matter how many times they've done something that you've asked them to do like a certain way, no matter how many times they've done it a different way that displeases you. How do you help, I guess, keep couples from thinking negative about their spouse and going into that negative space?
Yeah.
And thinking on the good things, on the things that are right and pure and excellent, kind of like it says in Philippians, 4:6-8, I believe.
Yeah.
How do you keep a positive mindset about your spouse, thinking on the good things that they do?
Well, let's take a break and let's come back and talk about that, because that's a key point here, because there are things you can do to get you out of that mindset. So if you found yourself to where it seemed to be where you have a more negative perception of your spouse, your marriage, or the situation, let's talk about how we can get out of that mindset. So let's take a break and we'll be right back. Are you looking to strengthen your marriage? Are there reoccurring conflicts that continue to frustrate both you and your spouse? And could you benefit from faith-based solutions for today's relationship issues? At Tampa Family Resources, that's exactly what we offer. Check out our website today, tampafamilyresources.com. So guys, thanks for staying with us. Before the break, we were talking about having more of a negative perspective on your spouse or on your marriage. So now we want to talk about how to have more of a positive to come out of that negative space. So the first suggestion would be honor your spouse. So let's talk about that as what God would have us to do as far as honoring your spouse. So when I said that to you, babe, what do you think?
I guess really hearing me when I ask you to do something for me or for the family. Like really hearing me and not kind of blowing me off or ignoring me. I think that's one way to honor me if you're asking me.
Yeah, I am asking you.
Yeah, just not like if I ask you to do something specific, that you don't just decide to put your own twist on things. Like if I'm asking you specifically to, I don't even know, like,
Mhm.
what would be something specific that I would ask you to do?
Something specific you'd ask me to do?
Yeah.
Folding the towels the way that you like me to fold them? I know that's what always comes up for us. Because you do more of that
Okay.
rolling thing, and I'm more of a folder kind of guy.
Right.
So,
Well, there's a, but see, that's a good example because there's a reason why I do my towels that way. First of all, they look nice and pretty and neat
they do.
in the linen closet when they're all rolled up tight.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's like a space saving thing because you
Mhm.
can fit more in the space
Mhm.
and they're not all just jammed in there, even though the kids manage to do that anyway. So there's a specific reason, and it just keeps everything looking a little
Mm.
bit more tidy.
Yeah.
So if I ask you to specifically do it that way and you agree, and then you just, kind of do it which way you want, then to me, it would seem like you're not hearing me.
Mm. I can understand that. But what if I can't roll them just as good as you can?
Okay, see,
Like you're the best roller in the world.
great. But if I can see that you're being intentional about trying, it's different
Mm-hmm.
than just to completely ignore what I'm asking
Well,
of
yeah.
you.
Well, yes.
It's different. That's
Well,
where where somebody could come behind that and say, he's intentionally doing this wrong.
well, I
So,
could.
so maybe not for me not to ask him to do it again.
Are you talking about passive aggressiveness? Because that's what that can be considered.
Well, I mean, some people could do that, right?
Yeah.
I know we saw it on a show.
Yes.
Right on a show one time that the husband was doing things intentionally wrong. So
Mm.
the wife wouldn't ask him to do them anymore.
Yes. Yes. That's a way to
I'm
be
not
passive.
saying that you do that. Do
I'm
you
not
do that?
saying. I'm not saying I do that either.
Do you do that?
I know, but I mean, you're just a really good towel roller, and I'm not quite there yet. I'm trying, but you definitely have perfected it over the years. Mastered.
Well, we all have, our areas that we're better at,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But
I've accepted it.
that would be one of those, an example of honoring your spouse.
Mm. Well, another example we have here is seeing your spouse as a treasure and treating them as so.
So what would that look like for you?
Well, think about what a treasure is. Like if something is a treasure and it's valuable, you're going to treat it differently than you do everything else.
Hmm.
You're gonna, care for it differently. If it's something that is alive, you're going to talk to it differently. You're going to protect it differently. Like you're going to treat it as a treasure, and you're not going to let harm come to it. You're going to treat it like a gift. So I think as far as honoring your spouse as a treasure, I think it's important, and to treat it as so, that would be how I would see it. Like even your opinion, as you share with me with the towels, and I know we were joking about it, like if that's important to you, it's going to be important to me. So I'm going to do my best effort to attempt to match your desire in rolling it the way you do. And I know that's just one small example. It could be, putting groceries away in the pantry. I'm talking about everyday stuff, just the way we make sure the clothes are going into the basket, cleaning up the shower after we're done in the bathroom, just little stuff, that everyday stuff, like keeping the car clean. I know is another big one for you. If that's very important to you. So I'm going to treat it as a treasure the same, because I know it means something to you. So it should mean something to me. Now, the biblical side of that in Matthew 6:21 is talking about where Jesus says, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, your heart will be also.
So if you're treating your spouse as a treasure, then your heart is going to be after doing things to essentially help your spouse feel like you treasure them, like you value them.
You will. And again, you're going to see them differently. Because remember we said before, talking about negative with your spouse, you get into that place where you have that negative perception. Because you're not treasuring them anymore.
Right. Well, and I think it is, again, it's that balance of thinking like, okay, everybody's going to do things, that aren't right all the time.
Right. Nobody's
right?
perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
Yes.
But thinking on the good things, for example, like, you know, there are things that I do that aren't necessarily your thing,
Yes.
but you come alongside me to support me and to encourage me,
Mm-hmm.
i.e., this whole real estate thing that I'm doing. Like, that's not really your thing.
Right.
But in essence, like, I'm your thing, right? Like, you're about me. And
You are my
not,
thing.
not to call me a thing, but, just using that language,
Yes.
like, because you're about me,
Mm.
then you're kind of about my business as well.
Yes.
So you kind of come to encourage and support and do whatever you can to help me be successful. And I love that about you, because you do that well.
Well, no, no, talk about that, because again, that's focusing on the positive things in the marriage, right? Like, yeah, me, I'm not a salesman. We've talked about this. Like, it's not my thing. I don't want to sell people stuff. I want to help people,
Right.
but necessarily I don't need to sell them something to help them, right? So this being your thing, like, but I can come alongside you and help you, nurture you, and cherish you, right? It's still helping people. It's building you up. It's helping you. It's going to help you do better in your role, right? Which is also going to help us in our relationship and our marriage, because happy wife, happy life, right? You're doing good. You're feeling good. We're all doing good. We're all feeling good. It goes out throughout the entire marriage.
Well, it's good because we still have that team element, even though selling a house might not be your thing.
Right.
That's not really like the end result of it all.
Correct.
Right? Like, I'm getting into this, to help, again, to help people in a different arena, but we're still helping people. And you're coming alongside me to support that help for people. So we're still helping people. So it's not really just about the sale. It's about helping people, just a different arena.
So, and that's another key point, which we're sharing here with you guys, to get out of that negative mindset. And that's what you talked about, Philippians 4:8, because it's so important why God talks to us about that. He tells us, and I'm going to paraphrase, like, don't be thinking of all the negative, unhealthy things. Think about the things that are good, things that are right, things are true, just, holy.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Praiseworthy.
And praiseworthy. He says, think on these things. Right. And I know some new age people are going to be like, well, just think positive and life will be positive. But in essence, there's some truth in God's word. He's telling us not to focus on the negative, because he knows it's going to have a negative outcome on our life, emotionally,
well, if you think
physically,
about it,
and spiritually.
That whole thing of thinking on the positive is going to breed positive, that comes out of the Bible. They just put their own spin on things, but it's really that principle of thinking on the things that are good, and right, and pure, and excellent, and praiseworthy.
Yes.
That makes you feel good about your spouse when you think about, focus on the good things that they do. Yeah, they might mess up.
Right.
Yeah, they might do some things that aren't, the way you would do them. But they're there to add something to your life. Yeah. And if we look for those things that they're adding, then maybe those mistakes or those things they don't do just like you do, won't cause that negative mindset to start to happen in the marriage.
Well, another key point to focus in on is give your spouse benefit of the doubt. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, again, nobody's perfect. Believe that, they're not out to get you. Let's just say maybe they made a mistake, a good, honest mistake. Maybe, like, for me, I'll go, you're always in here, Miss. I don't know why this has always been my example in life. Taking the trash to the kitchen. Like, it's become habit, and maybe I forgot.
It's funny you bring that example up all the time, but we have no issues with the trash in our house.
I know we don't.
I just think it's hilarious that you always like choose that as an example.
I don't know, because it's just something that I went through. But focus on the positive with them. Give them the benefit of the doubt, and don't focus on the negative. Don't expect the negative to come.
Well, I think we need to praise more as well. Like when your spouse does something good that you like, that you can see that they're trying to do something good for you, like, praise them. Yes. Make sure that you show them that you're seeing them and that you appreciate them. Because what you praise and you appreciate, you're going to see more of, because I mean, human beings, they all like to be praised and appreciated. And as soon as they
Affirmed.
feel
Yeah.
like that tingle of, oh, I'm doing something good, they want to do more of that.
They do.
So
It's
that
the puppy.
doesn't change
It's
in
the puppy
marriage.
syndrome. Good doggy, good doggy. Pat, 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 pat. Here's a treat. He wants to go do it again. Humans aren't that much different as far as when it comes to that. We love, praise, and affirmation. It feels good. Now, the last point that I want to talk about, because again, we don't expect perfection. You're not going to get this right all the time. But if you notice yourself going down in that negative road, if you see yourself getting negative, stop and do not let it escalate. Like, stop yourself in the tracks and pray and ask God to help you. If you notice that you're being negative, ask your spouse for forgiveness when you've maybe went down that negative road with them.
Oh, you know what's a good thing? Maybe go pull out your wedding pictures and try to remember how you felt that day. Or maybe pre-wedding pictures, like when you're dating and you have the butterflies and you're in that infatuation, stage where you think that person is like you can't get any better, right? And that's why you chose to marry them. Think on those things to help you refocus on why you married this person and who that person is.
That takes you back to Philippians 4:8. Think about what's true, what is right, what is honorable, what is just. Yeah. That's refocusing back on the positive things that are happening in your marriage. Guys, I know this podcast may seem pretty light and pretty easy, but it should be. It shouldn't be hard work to have to focus on the positive things that you have in your relationship.
But it might not seem easy for some people that are in the trenches right now.
I understand, but there's something good there. Even when you can't see it, the enemy is going to convince you there's nothing good left. Because he wants you to focus on the negatives. He doesn't want you to see anything good. Right. He doesn't want you to have hope. But that's not the God we serve. He wants you to focus on what is good, right? To get you out of that spot that you are, that you can have hope, that you can transition out of that place, that neither one of you guys more likely are happy where you're at. If one of you guys do that and you start focusing on the happy and start focusing on the good things, right? The things that are true, right? That will begin to change the landscape of your marriage.
Well, maybe do some of those things that you used to do at the beginning that were fun and exciting and made you appreciate each other. I mean, these are just little suggestions, but there are things you can do to get yourself out of that negative mindset and focus more on, okay, why God brought us together. What were those things that we saw in each other that made us decide this is the person for me to spend the rest of my life with?
Absolutely. That's good, guys. Guys, we hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please do us a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Go and check us out on our website, covenantkeeper4life.com. You're going to see it right there under my beautiful wife there. It's got the website for you. Guys, join the mission. Too many marriages, too many families are out there being impacted, thinking that, hey, this is just the way it is. We need to stand up for marriage. We need to stand up for God. We're covenant keepers. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time.